So what we want to do is to help people understand the full range of a biblical worldview in terms of who they are as a person. It's more than just belief. It involves their emotional selves, their consciences, what makes them have pain and what gives them pleasure. We want to help them understand what it means to have a Christian speech life and a Christian behavioral pattern. And perhaps more importantly yet, is to indwell in them the deepest passion and desire and motive to serve and to love God. Now that brings us back to this great commandment again. This is your worldview. If you want to understand what your worldview really is, it's not a matter of what you can check off in terms of beliefs. It's the core of who you are in all of these areas. And that brings us back to this famous passage in Mark chapter 12, verse 30. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And we can see those facets of who we are in that particular passage. Unfortunately, this is the kind of culture we live in, the kind of church culture that many of you are in. Your church members have a sacred life and a secular life, and they are divorced from one another. There's a gigantic gap from one to another. Now, sometimes gaps are helpful, but sometimes they're not. And we have got to take this gap between the sacred and the secular and take it out of the way and reinstill in people, or to put it there for the very first time, that being a Christian and having a Christian mind permeates their life, every single facet of it. What does Christian faith have to do with these areas of life? In this Bible and Worldview Institute, we want to open up those kinds of things. Now, I'll be surveying a number of different kinds of options, a number of different worldview options. And some of them could scare you to death. A lot of names, a lot of terms, perhaps big ones, but we're going to simplify it. In fact, what I like to do is just to take some nice little diagrams, some little sketches, some circles, some squares, and things like that, and to pull together to try to help you understand what some of the competing worldview alternatives are to Christian faith. But to do so in a way that will help you remember them. And so I'll often use an object of daily life. You may not know anything about existentialism, but if you understand something about Mr. Potato Head, you might get a flavor of what existentialism is like. You just define yourself. You put yourself together however you want. Now, how do these things show up? In the space of about 12 minutes in my session, I will run through these worldviews, and we'll actually have a little quiz at the end. And we'll match up these objects with these symbols and with these names. It'll be a very quick thing, and then we're going to focus more upon where these worldviews show up in our culture. Because in order to have a working Christian mind, we need to evaluate everything in our culture and experience from that framework. Culture and media. I like to think of it as a camera. You look through the lens of the camera, and there are some filters there. And you can think in terms of these isms. You can think in terms of basic categories. You can think in terms of creation and fall and redemption. And we'll use some media to try to illustrate some of these points as well.
Here's how it all began. Everything started with the Big Bang. Then, over millions of years, evolution took its course. Of course, I'm obligated by the state of Kansas to present the church's alternative to the theory of evolution.
Now, that's a part of reality, and you may not want to deal with it. But you know what? If you are a Christian, you don't have an option here. God calls you to deal with reality.